Glad you're all able to make it today. Merry Christmas? Is that what I'm supposed to say? Boy. Driving here, it looked like I was in a snow globe. The road was clear, but everything looked like Christmas around me. So, this week is a bit special. I didn't think Exodus would fall into the Lenten aspect of things. Looking at the message for today, I found this. I had something different, actually, and then I saw this, and it really struck me. Because when you read quotes, you read it, you understand it, and you get the message, and that's it. But then with this one, I read it like 5 times, and each time it meant more than the last time. It was really neat. So faith is the bird that feels the light when the dawn is still dark. And whether you're talking about the bad things happening in life or the actual darkness and light, you can understand and feel almost, the difference between the two. And so, who is this guy? I can't pronounce his name. I don't even know. But I can tell you that he is a Bengali polymath. A polymath is somebody who's good at a lot of different things. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913. And so this was a pretty good one. And it's going to fall into place here real quick, and you'll be able to see this theme of faith. And so where are we? The children of Israel had just left Egypt at this point, and they're heading to Mount Sinai. Okay, that's what's happening. And so this message is repeated multiple times, not particularly in 1 through 7, but even in the chapters before. And it's a vicious cycle in today's life and every day. And it happened to you, it happened to your ancestors, and the people who aren't even born yet, it's going to happen to them. It's this vicious cycle, this need and want for more or for better. And it just happens to everybody. We all go through it. And so what it is we have a need to start complaining. And where does complaining start in life? Right as soon as you come out, isn't it? Are they happy when they come out? No, they're screaming, they're cold. I mean, it was warm and happy for 9 months. I mean, come on. And you got to come out to this. But are we laughing at this, really? You all have had kids. Come on. And so what happens? We complain about something and we talk to God. Now, there's a couple of different ways this can go, but the main ones are God grants our thoughts and our prayers, or he doesn't, and it's not to your liking, and you get upset. And I can't tell you that I'm not part of that. I've done that before. I've prayed about something and then have been upset because I didn't get what I wanted, like a little kid. And it happens to everybody. But this is a vicious circle. It keeps happening to everybody in every different part of life. So let's say God meets the need. You pray for something. Something bad happens. You pray for it. God meets it. He's listening to you. You know it. And you're like, thank you. Or those little ones where you hit all the green lights on the way home from work. I mean, that's a happy thing. And you just look up and say thank you. And then when one little thing goes wrong, that just messes up everything good that just happened. And so there's this almost biological need to complain about something because we just fall right back into that category and immediately forget all the nice things that happened. And so something else will always come up. We'll always find something, whether it be tomorrow is spring and it looks like winter outside. And so we have this conflicting setting. This happens here too. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped, but there was no water, no sustenance. And so have you ever been in life where something has changed and you thought, finally, I needed that to change. I needed something different to happen in my life. I needed to get out. I needed a vacation, whatever it may be. And you get there, and it's still not what you wanted. You're at the Bahamas, and you're like, this is what I needed to get away from work. And while you're at the Bahamas, you can't think of anything else but what's due on Tuesday. Or the fact that it's raining at the Bahamas, and you wanted sunshine. You're at this glorious place, and you're still thinking of the bad things, and that happens here. They left Egypt, and you're thinking, that's great. That's great. They got out of there. They needed to get out of there. They were basically slaves, right? And so now they got out. Moses gave them this, or God gave them this opportunity. Moses led them out, and they're out. So they're like, I'm free. This is wonderful. How many years did they spend in the desert? 40. 40 years in the desert. Now that's enough time for multiple generations to be created, right? And so these people, these children, are born into a world of what seems like slave makings in itself. So can we call it happy? I mean, do you think they saw it always as happy? Do you think it should have lasted less than 40 years for something like this to come up? 40 years of the same food. Everybody know what manna is? Pretty much, it's bread. Yeah, it's a bread. And so that's what they had. So they had this conflicting setting of you were happy, and then almost right away, like probably within a month or so, you're back to thinking you're worse off than when you started. And encouragement is always there. So like you set goals in life, and with new jobs, new house, things are changing in your life, you're like, finally, this is what needs to happen. And then you know what the end goal is going to be. The house is going to be beautiful. The job is going to pay a lot eventually. I'm going to have benefits eventually. But in the meantime, you're stuck in this purgatory of, what am I doing? What am I supposed to do? Was this a mistake? And you're like racking your brain about it. And this is where this quarreling comes into place. Not only are you quarreling with yourself, but you're also quarreling with God, being like, did I understand you right? Was I listening? Was I completely ignoring you? Because I'm at fault at that. I mean, this was not my first choice of career. This was not even close. And yet, because I had to, I told you about my calling. I had two of them because I missed the first one. And that was completely me, ignoring what was happening around me and trying to think that I wasn't good enough or that he had a different plan for me. So, and this conflicting came to light. So they quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. And Moses replied, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to test? But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses, saying, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and the livestock die of thirst? So Moses is blamed for everything that just happened. All this mysticism that just happened right before this is completely ignored. This thing, it could not be explained. People are still trying to explain it scientifically. And yet they just ignored all of it. And they're like, it's all your fault that we're like this. And completely ignoring God and the whole process. Because they would know that it's not his fault. And they know what the end goal is going to be, but they don't want to deal with it in the meantime. Which relates to verse 1, meaning, are they really free? If you got these shackles on of not having sustenance, if you had water that you couldn't drink, if you had food you couldn't eat, are you better off than when you were a slave somewhere but had everything you needed? Food, shelter, water. It's a conflicting thing. It's hard to understand. Even if you're not going through it, you can understand what they would be going through. And so Moses is just a drone at this point. We hear drones in the news, these things that do for something else. And so he was the one doing the earthly work for God. And so right away, though, he's ready to turn the job over to somebody else. Who wants that responsibility put on their head? That's an awful burden. You have a whole bunch of people in your care, meaning you know God is there, and you know if you ask, hopefully he will provide. That's what you're doing. But in the meantime, he's the one they're looking to. Every question that they have, you think food and water were the only things that they needed? I highly doubt that. To live with a huge group of people requires a lot of different things. And every time an issue would come up, who would they go to? And so he took it upon himself and he was really hurting. And he pushes the question upstairs right away in verse 4. Then Moses cried out to the Lord, what am I to do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me. And you can see that. Now, what does that say about the people? How often have we attacked a leader because we didn't agree with them, but didn't think about what would happen if we had no leader at all. And we can relate with some of the things that are happening today, whether it's on the news or in your life. What would happen if that wasn't there? Would you be better off if they weren't? Think about it. If you don't like your boss and you wish these bad things to happen, and they happen, and you're out of a job, then what? Are you happy? If you are, there's something wrong. Of course you're not. Of course you're not. And so, this was another funny thing, too, that I have to talk about first and then revert back to in verse 6. But they say stoned. You're almost ready to stone me, is what he said. That caught my eye at the last second, because how often do we hear that in the Bible? Is that a common occurrence in the Bible, or is it, well, we see these empires have different ways of doing things. And so we know what stoning is, but to say it right now doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You have people on edge, and you have people who are armed. So to find stones in the desert just to stone him with it, or are they going to use what's on hand? So that brought me out of this element as to what they were talking about. What does it mean to stone somebody? You're trying to kill them ultimately. So to use the stone as the killing part, and then later to tell us that the stone was the one that gave them life, now it means more, doesn't it? And that's exactly what we're supposed to get from it. In verse 5, there was a command and a promise issued. The Lord answered Moses. He walked ahead of the people. Take some of your elders of Israel. So they had witnesses, so we have the story for later. And take with you some of the elders of Israel. Take in your hand the staff which struck the Nile, and go. Why the staff? Do we know what God's capable of? Some of these outrageous stories we hear, we know he's capable of. Why would he have him separate himself from the group? Why would he have to take the people with him? And why did he have to use a staff to bring forth the water from the rock? All different questions. It's so straightforward, I know, and then I screw it all up. That's what happens. And so, why did they separate themselves? Well, do you think it is a good thing to have multiple opinions in a crowd? Do you think people handle different opinions good? Well, not really, no. No, if you have your opinion and somebody's stepping on you, basically, you're going to stand up for yourself and you're going to fight with that person about that your opinion is better, and you're going to try and explain why. When all this is happening, you've seen beehives. It's the swarm of chaos. And so, can it affect the outcome? Back in, this was way before my time, probably like, I don't know, the 60s and the 50s and all that. So you have these people who staged these large grouped things. Yeah, we try and do it now, but there's more laws and it's handled better. But back then, it made this impact, and that's how you had to do stuff to get stuff done, right? So can't the opposite be true? If you have one person who's trying to do good and everybody else is trying to do bad, is the good going to be overpowered? God can intervene, but we make our own choices. So they are ultimately going to be overpowered. And so separating themselves is a way to get things done. They had to have that separation. Not only that, but we talked about the elders being with them. Why elders? Couldn't they just randomly pick people? What were elders? Leaders. Respected people. Exactly. Leaders. They were the ones people looked to. So if Moses was the one they were upset with to take the respected people in that community, that was super important, because now the word that is said has backup. And backup is always needed. We always need him. He is always our backup. And so why the staff then? That's another good point. So we just separated the elders and Moses, being as ones looked upon as good and the others looked upon as bad. So why the staff? Now, we know God. Couldn't he have brought the water from anywhere? It could have rained. It could have just come out of the desert. It could have come straight up out of the ground. It could have come from anywhere, but why a rock? Why did it? And why did the staff? Well, the staff. What was the staff used for before? Multiple things. But what's the most famous we think of? Parting of the sea. And he was told to do that. Use the staff. And now this staff is symbolic. It means something. If you see somebody with something, if you see John Wayne without his cowboy stuff on, do you recognize him? Not really. He's noted for that. And so Moses has his staff. I thought since it was countryish it would work. Okay. So we have this symbolic thing that is connected to this symbolic moment. And that's where it needs to be important. Now, the people didn't see this happen, but the elders reported it being used in the happening. And that's where the importance comes from. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb, strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink. So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. This is the fun part. This is the meat and potatoes of the sermon. First of all, interestingly, God told them that he would be present. Now we're talking about Moses and all the respected elders in that community. Why in the world would he have to say that he was going to be there? These are devout people. These are the people who have steadfast faith, that know God is with them. Yet God had to make it known that he was going to be there. We're always in this agreement that he's all around us all the time. Why in the world would he have to tell us? That makes it super important now, doesn't it? And that's why we're still talking about it. So he made it known that he was present. He made it known that God was always with us. But why was it necessary that he was there? And there's multiple things we're going to talk about. First of all, what does the rock represent? We just talked about it. Well, the water could have came from anywhere. Literally anywhere. He could have dropped a whale full of water down in the desert. But it came from a rock. Now, what does the rock mean? Well, a couple of things. We talked about the difference between what they could have done and what Moses thought they were going to do. And then in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, 1 through 4, it says, "Moreover, brethren, I would not that we should be ignorant how that all of our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized under Moses in the cloud and the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink. For they drank from that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ." Boom. Mic drop, right? It says it all right there. And now this story just changes. We see all they did was get water. That's what we thought. Sorry. They just got water. And that's what they needed. But then we have a representation of what the rock had to do with anything. And it changes everything. And that's why I chose this for the Lenten part of it. Could have made the water flow at any time. Now, another interesting thing is, has water always been portrayed as good in the Bible? No. What bad thing happened? The big one. That's right. And so that's another thing too, Liz. I haven't been doing this that long. But when you're in Bible school and you're teaching these children, what is one of the first stories that you tell? Noah and the ark. And what is the biggest massacres that we have ever experienced in the world? Noah and the flood. Everything was gone. And this was earlier. So we can see this conflicting thing between sustenance, the thing that makes us stronger and live, and the thing that has so much power, which reminds us of something, doesn't it? And there's I said that right. Okay, verse 7, "And he called the place Messiah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, 'Is the Lord among us or not?'" So first, when you see the last verse in these things, it's usually a wrap-up. It's usually just, this is what happened, and this was what it means. But it's kind of given an ultimatum at this point. it says before this, in this verse cluster here, thou shalt not test the Lord. And yet it ends with the question, is the Lord among us or not? That's where it ends. Which is testing the Lord. You're putting Moses in the corner. You're saying, you either deliver God, you better deliver something and show us something, or you don't exist. When that happens, how often does God listen to it? I mean, is that faith at all? That's the interesting part. This whole thing is about faith. It's about seeing something. It's about the manna falls from heaven. The quails that fell from heaven so they had meat, and the water flowing from the rock. He did all this. And at the very end, is the Lord among us or not? After that miracle of striking the rock, giving you water, guess where we just did? We started that vicious cycle all over again. And that's where we wrap up. So we cannot just find something else. Because he's delivering. He's constantly delivering. He's still delivering. He's telling us. He's showing us. Let us reap those benefits that he's there, that he loves us, that he's providing for us. And ultimately, not only is this going to be a happier place, but you're going to be happier in your lives. Amen? Very good.